My name is Tammy Lysander, 30 years old. The shriek of my phone cleaves through the dark at 2:17 a.m., turning the room a panicked red as my security app flashes. Motion detected. Main greenhouse. I'm upright before my mind catches up, grabbing keys, shoving into yesterday's jeans, still rimmed with dried loam at the knees. The drive is 11 minutes, I count by breath, not miles. Gravel spits under my tires as my headlights shear the night and find the gate. Padlock snapped clean through like a wishbone. Something in my chest gives with it. I park crooked, leave the beams on, and shoulder the gate. Glass crunches under my boots, the sound like lake ice in deep winter. No, I hear myself say, not whispering, not loud, just the small voice a body makes when it recognizes a life ripped open. Rows that were once mathematically ordered now lie raised, hanging baskets guillotined, ferns dragged and ground into green pulp, terracotta exploded into shrapnel. Orchids, my finicky miracles, are split down their throats. Whoever did this understood exactly how to hurt me. I force my legs toward the office in the back corner, a metal box with a brain, cameras, logs, schedules layered like lace across the walls. The monitor wakes under my touch. My finger trembles, but is steady enough for rewind. The picture stutters and then clears. He steps into frame. Tyler, illuminated like he wanted to be seen, my brother raises my own shears to the lens, a salute or a sentence, and begins. He moves with a surgeon's patience and a butcher's aim. He looks up, often enough to make sure I'd have no mercy left to give. 2 hours of methodical ruin spool past. It isn't rage, it's choreography. I slide down the wall into a drift of potting soil and shards, phone hot in my hand from filming stills of my screen. When my breath returns, I call the police and explain clearly, voice steady because collapse will not plant a single seed. While I wait, dawn begins its quiet work at the edges of the sky. I catalog damage, section by section. A week ago, only a week, we were at my parents' table. Mom passed mashed potatoes with soft hands that have never known pruning shears. Dad cleared his throat the way he does before announcing decisions already made. Tammy, honey, Mom began, voice gentled for what she wanted. Tyler's between jobs again. We thought your greenhouse would be perfect for him. You're doing so well now. I'd place my fork down like a fragile thing. I can't take anyone on without experience. The Hartwell contract is critical. Precision matters. Dad laughed without humor. How hard can watering flowers be? My tongue had pressed hard against all the knowledge he trivialized. pH, microclimates, timed feedings, fungal nightmares that bloom from a single careless glove. Mom reached for my hand, the plea in her touch as practiced as grace before meals. Family takes care of family. I am, I said, meaning myself at last. Tyler's smile was tight. No worries, sis, I get it. But the next morning the text began. You think you're better? Must be nice being the favorite now. Guess family means nothing. I blocked him on day 3, then blocked the sick feeling that followed. Sirens stitch the night into morning, then fade to a hush of uniforms and pens. I give my statement, hand over the footage, answer questions about access, keys, grudges. The words restraining order and charges are not theory now. They are planks I step onto to cross a river that has been rising for years. When the officers leave, I'm left with the sound of unseen things scurrying in broken leaves. I stand, wipe damp soil off my palms, and realize something inside me has clicked into place, like a door I didn't know was open has finally shut. At noon, I turn into my parents' driveway, the white columns suddenly looking like costume jewelry. Inside, Dad is a still life, leather recliner, paper folded perfectly, expression cast in pewter. Tyler sprawls on the couch, phone in hand, the posture of someone rehearsed in being waited on. Mom's cardigan is Sunday soft even though it's Tuesday. No one stands when I enter, but the air does. My greenhouse was vandalized last night, I say, laying a folder on the coffee table. The Hartwell order is gone. Mom gasps in the key she reserves for disasters. Oh, sweetheart, did you call the police? I did. I look at Tyler. His gaze gives me nothing. They have the footage. I don't know what you're talking about, he says. voice wrapped in innocence like a gift that never arrives. I pair my phone to the TV. The screen blooms. There he is, raising my shears to the camera, then slicing through a row of orchids that took 3 years to perfect. Mom's hand flies to her mouth. Dad stills so hard the newspaper crackles. "Turn it off," Dad says when the first row falls. I pause it on Tyler's face, haloed by my own work. "The police are filing charges," I say. "Criminal damage, breaking and entering." "Surely we can handle this privately," Mom whispers, as if God is sleeping in the next room. Dad flips open his checkbook like a priest opening a hymnal. "The greenhouse is insured. I'll cover the deductible and then some. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. You don't want this following your brother." A laugh escapes me, small and sharp. "This is not about money." "Then what?" Tyler snaps, the mask slipping at its corners. "Punishment? You always want to make a point." "Consequences," I say. "Something you've never had to face." Mom steps between us. Hands up. Traffic cop, peacemaker, magician. "We gave him a key for emergencies," she blurts when I ask how he got in. The glance between her and Dad lands like a stone. "Since you bought the place," Dad adds, as if longevity is virtue. 4 years, I repeat, tasting the number. 4 years you could enter my home without my knowledge. I remember the times I thought I'd misplaced tools, the nights I felt watched and told myself it was the wind worrying the panels. In the footage, Tyler's movements looked less like malice and more like someone executing a story he'd been told his whole life about what he was allowed to take. "Name your price," Dad insists, as if this is a negotiation for a used car. My eyes move to the mantle. Tyler at graduation, Tyler with the red Mustang, Tyler on skis in Whistler. In the corner, a small frame holds my business license, tucked in like an apology. "Some things can't be bought," I say, sliding my phone into my pocket. Tyler stands, heat shimmering off him. "You always thought you were better." "No." I meet his eyes and let him see the ruin he made and the ruin he didn't. I just worked harder. He steps forward, jaw ropey, voice rising. Mom reaches for him. Dad half stands, the choreography of our family's disaster. "You needed to be knocked down a peg," Tyler spits, confessing like a zealot. "You're not special." The room goes very quiet inside the noise. There it is, spoken plain, the creed that funded his life. Mom turns to me, even now, to soften what can't be softened. "He didn't mean—" "He did," I say, and the court will hear it. I gather my folder. On the coffee table, a Christmas photo smiles its lie at us. I lay it face down and feel a click in my spine that sounds like a lock engaging. On my way out, Dad calls my name once. I don't turn. The front door closes with a hush, and in that small sound, I hear something I have not allowed myself in years: relief. On the porch, I breathe air that does not ask me to be smaller. The sun has climbed high enough to pour light into the ruined places. The police report in my bag is thin, but it's a beginning. The wreckage at the greenhouse is a grave and a seed at once. I have always known how to plant. I walk to my truck with the steadiness of someone who finally believes herself. Gravel shifts, tree line murmurs, and somewhere a bird tries a note twice before it's sure. The next time my phone vibrates, it's a text from my assistant. She'll give a statement. The banker will too. The landscaper already called to check in. A different kind of family has been forming quietly while I wasn't looking. I turn the key, aim the truck toward the wreck I'm going to resurrect, and say aloud to the empty cab, "This ends here." The engine answers with a low, faithful hum. I drive. The first thing I ever grew was a lima bean in a plastic cup. I was 14, and our science teacher wrapped seeds in damp paper towels and told us to be patient. Most kids forgot theirs on the windowsill. I carried mine home like a relic, checking it every hour until the skin split and the white hook of a root uncurled. When the first true leaf lifted itself toward the light, something inside me stood up too. It wasn't just a plant. It was proof that small, quiet work could become a living thing if you kept tending it when no one was watching. By 16, I was selling thrift store terracotta pots of basil and mint from a rickety card table in my parents' driveway. I painted a sign with the word greenhouse in block letters and taped a coffee can underneath to catch bills and coins. At the end of the weekend, I'd made $20. I didn't spend a cent. I printed a label and stuck it to the tin. Greenhouse Fund. My classmates were at the mall buying glow sneakers. I was Googling zoning requirements and reading forums about soil sterilization like they were love letters. You're really going to save for 10 years? Dad laughed when I showed him a spreadsheet I'd made, columns for costs and columns for time. Mom patted my shoulder in the kitchen, smiling in a way that tucked me neatly back where I belonged. It's a lovely hobby, sweetie. The next afternoon, a red Mustang appeared in the driveway with a bow on it the size of a small animal. Tyler revved it 3 times for the neighbors. I stood at the sink with potting grit under my nails and saw a shape form. In this house, dreams were gifted or they weren't real. I got a second job stocking shelves at the hardware store and a third pouring coffee at dawn, my hands moving from espresso handles to hose couplers without a seam. I slept 4 hours a night, ate granola bars for dinner in the alley, and took online business classes on my lunch break, the kind with tinny audio and professors who sounded bored. When customers complained about the dirt under my nails while I handed them their lattes, I smiled and said, "I'm growing something." I could tell they thought I meant hope. I meant inventory. At 22, I walked into the bank in my only blazer, a binder bulging with a plan I'd written and rewritten until the edges went soft. The loan officer wore cufflinks that flashed when he turned the pages without reading them. "So, you want to grow plants," he said, dragging out the last word like a joke he hadn't decided whether to laugh at. "Specialized ornamentals and rare specimens for commercial clients," I answered, and kept my voice even. "Drought-tolerant lines for our region. Contract-based. Here are year-one projections, and here are my suppliers and my fallback suppliers. Here is the phased build. Here are the margins." He raised an eyebrow, then both. 3 hours later, he approved half of what I'd asked for. "Best I can do for someone with no history. Take it or leave it." I took it. I knew history was something you built, board by board, until one day people called it inevitability. The land I could afford was 10 miles out of town, 27 acres of angry weeds and poor drainage, and a sky so big it felt like a dare. The previous owner had tried to turn it into a subdivision and given up. I got it for a price that would have insulted it if land had pride. The first morning, I parked in a sea of foxtails and listened to the field breathe. Then I pulled on gloves and started hauling rocks. There is a kind of loneliness that's clean, like the space where you've taken a bad splinter out. That was the kind I felt that first year. Mornings at the coffee shop, afternoons at the hardware store, evenings laying irrigation pipe by headlamp. My shoulders burned. My wrists sang old songs. In January, I slept on a cot inside a shipping container office so I could listen for wind worrying the frame I was raising and run out with a wrench if something groaned. When pipes burst during a hard freeze, I learned the sound of water that isn't supposed to be moving. I learned how to swear without anyone hearing me. I learned to fix it. Once, in late autumn, I was standing on a ladder, trying to convince a polycarbonate panel and a wind gust to stop being enemies, when a truck I didn't recognize rolled up and stopped without kicking dust. A man stepped out in a jacket with an old landscaper's logo on the chest. "Want a hand?" he asked, already reaching for the ladder. I handed him the other end of the sheet, and he moved exactly like someone who knew what to do without needing to talk about it. We worked until midnight under a harvest moon, our breath white between laughs when a bolt refused to thread. After, we sat on upturned buckets drinking lukewarm coffee. "Most people hire contractors for this kind of work," he said. "Most people have more money than I do," I answered. "But they don't always have more will." He smiled down into his cup as if he'd just identified a rare plant and was trying to decide whether to tell anyone. "Michael," he said, offering the name the way you offer a tool, useful, not flashy. I told him mine, and the word felt like a seed pressed into good soil. Tyler visited once that winter, tires spreading a ribbon of mud over the driveway slope I'd finally graded smooth. He surveyed the skeletal frame, the stacks of lumber, the trenches like scars across the field. "This is what you're killing yourself for?" he asked, gesturing at everything and nothing at once. "Looks like a whole lot of nothing." I wiped my forehead with the back of my hand and said, "It looks like a beginning." He shrugged. "Mom wants you at dinner Sunday. Dad's golf buddy is bringing his son. Says you'd hit it off." "I'm pouring the foundation," I said. He rolled his eyes and left twin black curves across the new gravel as he drove away. The first greenhouse stood by December, braced, paneled, humming with the low music of fans. I slept in it the night the wind tried to peel it open, a wrench under my pillow like an old talisman. In the morning, it was still there. In January, I contracted my first hotel courtyard install. $8,000 felt like a cathedral. I called my parents from the shipping container, hands shaking. "That's wonderful, honey," Mom said, distracted. "Tyler just got a promotion. We're taking him to Whistler to celebrate. I'd invite you, but you're so busy." The line clicked, and I stared at the plywood walls with my planting schedules pinned in rows and thought, I am busy. I am also alone. I built that loneliness into rows and systems. I built it into a schedule that knew when to mist and when to starve. I built it into trust with suppliers who noticed I paid on time even when the numbers didn't want to dance for me. The morning the Hartwell proposal came, a commercial headquarters installation with a number that made my stomach flip, I walked the aisles of my own greenhouse and felt every nerve stand at attention. I measured, tagged, charted, and planned until midnight, then sat on the tailgate of my truck with a cup of coffee watching the moon silver the leaves. For the first time, it felt like the life I'd been building wasn't just scaffolding. It was a room I could live in. Of course, the next part was Tyler asking for a job. Of course, Mom's voice was soft and Dad's certainty was hard as cut stone. "He just needs a chance," they said. I heard what they didn't. "He needs the chance you made for yourself." "I need experience for the Hartwell timeline," I said, and watched the request turn into accusation in real time. Watched love curdle into a species of debt I hadn't agreed to owe. The text started. Barbed, then cruel, then drunk. I blocked his number and told myself that boundaries are not weapons. They are fences that keep good things safe enough to grow. When the footage played back later, the way he moved inside my work made sense in a new, terrible way. He had been given keys his whole life, to cars, to doors, to forgiveness. Of course, a key to my place made sense to him. Of course, he would hold up the shears and look straight into the camera, the same way he'd held up that Mustang's keys for the neighbors and grinned. He believed he was allowed to be seen taking what he wanted. But that year had given me a different kind of key. In the bank, the officer who barely looked at me sent me a terse note months later. "Strong quarter, keep it up." In town, suppliers who'd once required cash shook my hand and said, "Net 30, like a blessing." Michael showed up without being asked. When a storm snapped a vent open and rain tried to baptize everything. "You keep receipts like field notes," he said once, flipping through my binders. "You make order out of weather." I didn't know I needed to hear that until I heard it. I learned that effort can be its own inheritance. I learned that some families pass down certainty, and some of us pass down grit to ourselves, one midnight at a time. I learned to recognize the look on a person's face when they choose you because you are reliable, not because they are obligated. And I learned, slow, stubborn, that love, which requires you to vanish, is not love. It is hunger in a borrowed costume. When the Hartwell contract was signed and I penciled each plant into its place, I felt the line I'd been walking my whole life harden under my feet. On one side, the old choreography where I apologized for taking up space. On the other, a life I was allowed to inhabit at full height. I chose. The fact that choosing would provoke a reckoning didn't make the choice smaller. It made it true. By the time the first sabotage arrived, a suggestion dressed up as help, a key discovered only after the lock broke, I had already built enough of myself to meet it. The field that once dared me had grown quiet. When I walked the rows at night with a flashlight, the leaves made a sound like pages turning. The plants were learning their names. So was I. The morning after Tyler's confession rang through my parents' living room, I returned to the greenhouse wreckage with a strange steadiness in my chest. The devastation was absolute. Rows of succulents overturned, irrigation pipes snapped, the air itself holding the sour tang of crushed vegetation. But inside the ruin, I began to make lists. That's what my survival looked like. Columns, numbers, steps. First list, inventory. Every plant cataloged, every shard photographed, every pot labeled with the exact replacement cost. Second list, insurance claim contacts, deadlines, policy clauses I'd memorized years ago. Third list, people I could rely on, not blood, but bond. The insurance adjuster arrived expecting tears. He found me with binders spread across a folding table, hands dirt-streaked, but steady. Most clients don't keep records this detailed, he murmured, flipping through pages of purchase receipts, growth logs, and order confirmations. Most clients don't build their lives out of paper trails and persistence, I said, and he didn't argue. By afternoon, the community began to arrive, uninvited but not unwelcome. The owner of the coffee shop where I'd worked my dawn shifts years ago appeared with work gloves and a thermos. You served me 1,000 cappuccinos when you were half asleep. Time to return the favor. Behind him came Michael, no introduction necessary, just holding 2 cups of coffee and scanning the wreck like it was a battlefield he intended to reclaim. We worked until the sun bled orange across the broken glass. Silence stretched between us, companionable, the kind that builds trust brick by brick. When I faltered lifting a broken beam, Michael took the weight without a word. He didn't tell me it would be fine. He didn't tell me to stop. He just matched me, pace for pace, strength for strength. By nightfall, we'd salvaged a small pile of survivors, seedlings with roots intact, a few herbs clinging stubbornly to life. It was almost nothing. It was also a beginning. That evening, the phone rang. Hartwell's project manager. My chest tightened, expecting cancellation, a polite withdrawal wrapped in corporate sympathy. Instead, her voice carried something unexpected: respect. We heard what happened. Take the time you need. Your integrity is why we hired you, and that hasn't changed. Relief nearly buckled my knees. In her tone, I heard something my parents had never given me: belief without conditions. Without. But as light returned to the greenhouse, shadows lengthened elsewhere. Mom's calls came daily, pleading for understanding, for handling this as a family. Each time I let them ring into silence. Dad left messages clipped and businesslike. Let it go. You'll regret dragging Tyler's name through the mud. Tyler himself was quiet, too quiet. His silence felt like pressure before a storm. 3 nights later, headlights swept across my driveway. Tyler's truck, idling just beyond the gate. He didn't come in. He didn't need to. The message was written in exhaust and arrogance. Boundaries meant nothing to him. I documented the visit, time-stamped photos, forwarded everything to my lawyer. Each record became a stone in the wall I was building between their chaos and my future. The 1-star reviews started soon after, anonymous, but the phrasing too familiar. Words like untrustworthy and unstable, the very accusations my mother's friends had whispered at Bridge Club years before. I flagged them as harassment, knowing their reach was shallow compared to the reputation I had bled for in soil and sweat. The Chamber of Commerce sent an envelope with an invitation and client leads. Your resilience has impressed a lot of people, said Catherine, the woman who handed it to me at the gate. Her eyes lingered on the broken glass still glittering in piles, then on the salvaged seedlings lined up like tiny soldiers. Not many rebuild this quickly. Not many had been training for this fight their entire lives, I thought. I slept on a cot in the office, listening to the hum of new security cameras being installed. 8 in total, each red light a silent vow. Michael came every morning with bagels or coffee, his presence steady as sunrise. Once he found me bent over a spreadsheet, assigning each insurance dollar to its precise use. You plan even your scars, he said quietly. I didn't answer, but when his hand brushed mine as he handed me coffee, I didn't pull away either. Hiring 2 assistants felt like breaking a private vow. I'd sworn the greenhouse would live and die by my hands alone. But the Westridge contract loomed larger than anything Hartwell had asked for, and for the first time I admitted I couldn't do it all alone. When I told Michael, surprise flickered across his face, then softened into something that looked suspiciously like pride. Delegation, he teased. That's growth. And yet for every inch I claimed forward, my family pulled at me like an undertow. A message from Mom arrived one morning. Family dinner. Tonight at 7. Time to make peace. I read it 3 times, my gut clenching tighter with each pass. It wasn't peace they wanted. It was silence. My silence. Still, avoidance couldn't last forever. "You don't have to go," Michael said when I called him, voice taut with nerves. "But if you do, I'm coming with you." His offer landed like an anchor in storm water. For once, I wasn't preparing to walk into the lion's den alone. That evening, we drove to my parents' house, headlights tracing the too-perfect lawn, the brass knocker polished to a shine. Mom opened the door before we knocked, her perfume wrapping around me like a net. "Sweetheart," she breathed, eyes darting to Michael. "So nice to finally meet you." Inside, the table glittered with crystal and china, performative, staged. But the real performance was yet to walk in. The table was set for 5. My stomach dropped even before I heard the footsteps. Tyler, casserole dish in hand, face arranged into humility, so false it made my teeth ache. The restraining order was clear, 500 feet. Instead, here he was, standing 3 feet away with my parents' blessing. "What is this?" My voice cut the room into pieces. "Now, Tammy," Mom rushed. "We thought it was time to talk this through like adults." Michael's hand settled at the small of my back. Dad gestured stiffly to the chairs. "Sit. Your mother made pot roast." The audacity was suffocating. But worse was the familiar script already unfurling. Tyler's apology, smooth and rehearsed, my parents' insistence on forgiveness, their offers of checks written in exchange for silence. I saw the shape of it before the words even began. Only this time, I had brought my own script. Folders of evidence, photos, timestamps, messages from blocked numbers, proof of every boundary violated since the court date. I laid them on the table one by one, like cards in a game my family didn't know I was willing to play. Each page widened the silence. Each page stripped away their excuses. True amends would mean change, real restitution, not money, not words, but change. Tyler's mask cracked first. Rage burst through, hot and sharp. "You've always thought you were too good for us, too good for this family." "No," I said, voice quiet but unyielding. "I just finally know what I deserve." I stood then, gathering my folders. Behind me, Mom gasped. Dad muttered about money fixing everything. Tyler spat curses. But the only sound that mattered was the quiet click of the front door closing behind me, and Michael's steady steps matching mine into the night. The sky above was vast and star-pricked, the air clean in my lungs. For the first time in years, my family's house looked small behind me, fragile even. I walked toward the truck knowing that boundaries, once built, could hold, and that some inheritances are not worth keeping. The greenhouse awaited me, half rebuilt, but wholly mine. And as the night folded around us, I understood. What Tyler had tried to break was never just plants. It was me, and he had failed. 1 year later, morning light slants through skylights I installed with my own hands, painting fractured diamonds across rows of orchids, herbs, and ferns. The greenhouse hums with quiet life, fans spinning in rhythm with the drip of irrigation. Every corner tells a story. Scarred beams from the night of destruction, new panes fitted tighter than before, plants thriving where broken stems once lay in heaps. "Tammy?" Elaine, my newest hire, stands at the doorway, clipboard in hand. She's young, still in the phase where nervousness shows in every gesture. "The Martin account paperwork is ready for your signature." Her voice wavers, but her eyes shine with the pride of being part of something that matters. I nod. "I'll look it over before the team meeting." Team. The word still feels foreign, as if I've stolen it from someone else's vocabulary. For years, I insisted on being a team of one, terrified that sharing the weight would weaken the structure. Now, with contracts larger than anything I'd dared to imagine, I've learned the opposite. Foundations deepen when more than one pair of hands holds the beam. I adjust the drip line over a tray of specialty herbs destined for Chef Anthony's restaurant, the scent of basil sharp in the warm air. A soft vibration in my pocket pulls me from the work. A text from Michael. "Dinner tonight to celebrate the refinance. Got something special planned." My lips curve into a smile before I realize it. It still surprises me, the ease with him. Not born of obligation, but of choice. Respect was the first language we spoke to each other. Him handing me a bolt, me handing him trust, one unspoken word at a time. Somewhere between salvage operations and coffee shared over shattered glass, respect grew into something steadier, something warm. On the wall of my office hangs the framed business plan, yellowed now, but still legible in my cramped handwriting. 10 years ago, the banker who dismissed me barely glanced at it. Last week, he sent a congratulatory email. 70% repaid ahead of schedule. Excellent work. We'd like to refinance at a lower rate. I laughed when I read it, not with joy, but with the sound of someone who knows the joke has finally landed where it belongs. Therapy has been part of my rebuilding too. Dr. Watts calls it separating ties from bonds. Family ties. Automatic, blood thick, weighted with obligation. Family bonds. Chosen. Tested. Earned. I didn't understand the difference before. Now, standing in a greenhouse that is both scar and sanctuary, I do. A chime at the gate. I glance through the glass and see a silver sedan I know too well. My mother steps out, holding a terracotta pot with a small plant. Lavender, its stems trembling in the breeze. She hesitates, adjusting her cardigan, eyes scanning the perimeter as though searching for permission. We've spoken only in careful texts and occasional coffees these past months. Boundaries are fragile things, but she has begun to respect them. She doesn't enter uninvited anymore. She waits. Today she lingers by her car, pot cradled like a peace offering. I don't rush to her. I let the silence decide. Respect begins in pauses. Dad hasn't come at all. He's waiting for an apology I will never give. Not for protecting what's mine, not for refusing to barter my worth for his peace. Tyler finished his community service with the same performative compliance that has marked his entire life. He even applied at a rival garden center, padding his resume with greenhouse management experience. The owner called me for reference. I told the truth. Some bridges don't deserve repair. Inside, the team gathers for our morning huddle, faces lit with purpose. I catch fragments. Excitement over a new installation, someone laughing about muddy boots, another suggesting we try an innovative soil blend. This is family. Not the kind bound by obligation, but by shared vision and sweat. Evening brings Michael, steady as ever. He looks restless tonight, fiddling with his jacket pocket as he suggests a walk through the greenhouse. Under the arbor of climbing roses I propagated from cuttings, he kneels, eyes bright but unsure, a ring glinting in his hand. For a heartbeat, the world holds its breath. Then I let mine out in a laugh that tastes like relief. Yes, I whisper, and the greenhouse seems to bloom all at once. Later, our impromptu celebration spills across work tables, turned into dinner tables, mismatched chairs, laughter louder than the fans. Elaine clinks her glass, cheeks flushed. Michael squeezes my hand. Around us, friends, colleagues, chosen kin, raise glasses under the glow of skylights. Above the main entrance hangs a new sign, Lysander Family Greenhouse. The name hasn't changed, but its meaning has. Family is no longer the blood that tried to break me. Family is the people who help me stand again, who remind me every day that broken glass can still reflect light. I lift my glass. The toast is simple, but the words carry the weight of every night spent rebuilding. To family, I say. The kind we build ourselves. The cheer that follows is loud enough to drown out every echo of the past. And for the first time, I believe the future is mine to grow, season after season, rooted in strength instead of silence. The morning after our celebration, I woke before the sun, as I always do. Habit, discipline, maybe even a survival reflex. I no longer question it. I padded across the greenhouse floor barefoot, letting the cool concrete anchor me as the air warmed with the slow rise of heat lamps. The world outside was quiet, but in here, everything whispered of growth, the faint stretch of vines climbing, the soft hiss of misting nozzles, the sigh of leaves stirring against one another. I paused at the new sign above the door. Lysander Family Greenhouse. The word family still caught in my throat sometimes, but less like a wound now and more like a scar I could touch without flinching. Last night's laughter still echoed faintly between the beams. My chosen family had filled this space with warmth that no storm, literal or otherwise, could take away. Work waited, as it always did. The Westridge contract was due in 6 weeks, and my team had already turned it into a shared mission. Elaine had drawn up a planting rotation schedule, meticulous in detail. Javier, my second hire, was experimenting with soil blends to increase yield on delicate herbs. Every suggestion, every question carried ownership. I wasn't just running a greenhouse anymore. I was running something people believed in enough to call theirs too. By mid-morning, the first client of the day arrived, a restaurateur scouting specialty herbs. He shook my hand firmly, glanced around at the orderly rows, and said, "I heard about the trouble last year. Impressive how fast you've come back." His words weren't sympathy, they were respect. That was the currency I'd earned the hard way, and it spent better than pity. But shadows still lingered at the edges. While sorting invoices later, I found 3 more anonymous 1-star reviews. Different usernames this time, but the cadence too familiar. Mom's bridge club friends, perhaps, or one of Dad's acquaintances from the country club. It didn't sting anymore, not the way it used to. Still, I flagged them for removal, logged the harassment, and moved on. Because the truth is, they're watching. My family. Not from a place of support, but from the uncomfortable distance of those who can't reconcile who I've become with who they need me to be. I saw it 2 weeks ago at the farmer's market. Mom lingering by a booth 3 aisles down, pretending to examine jars of jam while her eyes kept flicking to me. I let her watch, offered no invitation. She left with empty hands. That evening, Michael showed up with a nervous smile and blueprints rolled under his arm. "Expansion," he said simply. "A second greenhouse, larger, better insulated. We'll need it if contracts keep growing." His faith in the word, we nearly undid me. For years, every decision had been mine alone, every mistake mine to carry. Now the thought of building with someone, literally and figuratively, felt both terrifying and liberating. We spread the papers across the kitchen table, his pencil tapping as he explained load-bearing calculations. I watched his hands move, calloused and sure, and thought about how different they were from my father's manicured, idle ones. Hands told stories long before words ever did. A week later, another text from my mother arrived. Dinner. Sunday. Just us. No surprises. I stared at it for a long time, my chest a tangle of suspicion and longing. Could I trust her word? Could I risk it? Michael noticed my silence. "You don't owe them," he said gently, "but you also don't owe your fear forever." I went, alone. The house was the same as always, perfect in its facade. Trimmed hedges, gleaming brass, windows reflecting back nothing of the chaos inside. Mom answered in an apron, hair pinned neatly. Dad sat in his recliner, the Sunday paper folded with surgical precision. For a moment, I felt 14 again, standing small in a house that was never built for me. But I wasn't small anymore. Dinner was awkward, strained, full of careful words. Mom spoke of lavender she'd planted, how it reminded her of me. Dad asked about the business in the same tone he used to ask about golf scores. Then, inevitably, Tyler's name surfaced. "He's trying, Tammy," Mom whispered. "The job market is cruel with a record like his. Surely you can help him." There it was, the same script played again. I set my fork down and met her eyes. I have helped him. Every time I said nothing. Every time I let it slide. Every time you asked me to carry the weight of his choices. That's help. It just wasn't the kind you recognized. Silence fell heavy. Dad cleared his throat as if about to offer money, but something in my expression must have stopped him. "I'm not here to fix him," I said softly. "I'm here to live my life. If he wants something different, he'll have to plant it himself." Mom's eyes glistened. Whether from grief, guilt, or realization, I couldn't tell. But she didn't argue. When I left that night, the door closed behind me with the same familiar click. Yet it sounded different this time, not like finality, but like closure. The following morning, I returned to the greenhouse as dawn broke. My team was already there, voices carrying across the rows, laughter mixing with the sound of running water. Michael arrived soon after, blueprints in hand, grin easy and unguarded. For the first time, I understood something that had eluded me for years. Survival is planting again, even when the last crop was destroyed. Growth is choosing who stands beside you when the storms come. And family, the real kind, isn't inherited. It's built. Leaf by leaf, season by season, root by root. I looked around at everything we'd built, and for the first time, I wasn't thinking about what had been taken. I was thinking about what still lay ahead. Spring settled over the property like a promise fulfilled. The fields around the greenhouse flushed green, wildflowers pushing through soil that had once seemed barren. Every morning, the air was thick with the smell of damp earth and the faint sweetness of blossoms. For the first time in years, I woke without dread, pressing at my ribs. Instead, I felt the forward pull of possibility, the sense that each day had room to grow. The second greenhouse rose steadily, beam by beam, a skeleton taking shape against the horizon. Michael managed the crew with quiet authority, his voice carrying over the thrum of drills and the slap of lumber. I worked alongside them, dirt under my nails as always, sweat running down my spine, because building with my own hands would always matter to me. By evening, when the crew left and the crickets began their song, Michael and I would walk the site together, imagining what it would look like filled with life. One night, sitting on an overturned crate, he handed me a water bottle and studied the nearly finished frame. "Funny, isn't it?" he said. "Tyler tried to break you, and now you'll have twice what you started with." I sipped slowly, letting the truth of his words sink in. "It's not about having more," I said finally. "It's about knowing it's mine. Built, not borrowed. Chosen, not handed." Michael's smile was quiet but warm, the kind that said he understood without needing more explanation. Business surged. The Westridge installation was a triumph. Office workers stopped to photograph the living walls we installed, clients emailed praise, and my team glowed with pride. Orders poured in, enough to keep both greenhouses buzzing from dawn to dusk. My once shaky reputation had transformed into something steadier, rooted in resilience. People wanted to be associated with someone who had risen from ruin. But shadows never fully disappeared. Tyler breached the no-contact order twice more, once by parking down the street, once by sending flowers to the greenhouse with a note scrawled in his old, mocking hand. "Guess you are better after all." Each violation went straight to my lawyer. I didn't flinch, didn't falter. Still, a coldness lingered in my chest each time. A reminder, some wounds scar, others stay tender. My mother, though, kept showing up differently. Not at my gate, not with ambush dinners, but with small gestures. A text asking which soil was best for roses. A holiday card signed simply, "Love, Mom." Once, she even attended a Chamber of Commerce event where I was speaking, sitting quietly in the back, eyes shining with something between pride and apology. We spoke briefly afterward. Her words were halting, imperfect, but they carried the weight of effort. That was enough, for now. Dad remained absent, a void I had stopped trying to fill. His silence was an answer all its own. And then came the night beneath the roses, when Michael's hand shook slightly as he pulled the ring from his pocket. My yes came with laughter, not tears, but the sound rang through the greenhouse like a bell announcing a new season. Our engagement sparked another celebration. Friends, employees, even clients gathered to toast beneath the skylights. Elaine raised her glass and declared, "To Tammy, who taught us that family isn't given, it's grown." The room erupted in cheers. I felt heat rise in my cheeks, but inside, something deeper bloomed. Belonging. Later, after the tables were cleared and only the two of us remained among the plants, Michael traced his fingers along a rose stem. "You know," he said, "storms will still come." "I know. But you've built walls that can stand." I leaned into him, the scent of roses thick in the air, and roots that can hold. The following weeks blurred with work and joy. Wedding plans mingled with soil orders, contracts overlapped with cake tastings. It was messy, beautiful, exactly the kind of chaos I had once thought I wasn't allowed to want. The past still flickered sometimes. Tyler's sneer, Dad's dismissive sigh, nights of exhaustion in a shipping container. But those memories no longer defined me. They were shadows cast by something solid, something that had outlasted them. On the morning the second greenhouse officially opened, I stood at its entrance, scissors poised to cut a ribbon. My team gathered, Michael at my side, community members beyond the gate. Cameras flashed. Applause rose. But in that moment, what I felt most wasn't pride or vindication, it was peace. Because this was the harvest of everything I had endured, not just plants thriving under glass, but a life finally rooted in strength, choice, and love. I cut the ribbon, and the future unfurled like a leaf reaching for light.